In this video, I'll demonstrate how to manage an S3 bucket. In Amazon Web Services, we use S3 buckets as file storage, much like we might store files on a local hard disk on our computer or a USB thumb drive. However, in this case with S3, it's stored in the cloud, so it's accessible anytime from anywhere. And we have to think about common file management tasks, like renaming files, moving them to folders, setting permissions, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started here in the AWS Management Console where I've already logged in. So down under the storage heading, I'm going to click the S3 link, and that will show me a list of my existing S3 buckets, or I could click the Create bucket to build a new one to organize my files. But I'm going to use the one I already have called Quick 24x7 Sample Bucket 1. I'm going to click right on it, and that will show me what's stored in the root of that bucket. So I don't see any folders, but rather I see two files, a JPEG file and a CSV file. So the first thing I'm going to do is start to organize these in folders to keep things easy to get access to. So I'm going to click the Create Folder button. That gives me a new field here next to a folder icon where I can type in the name of the folder I'm creating. In this case, Graphics, and I'll save that. And I'm going to select my JPEG image because what I want to do is put that into the graphics folder. So having that selected, I'll click the More button, I'll choose Cut, I'll click on the graphics folder to enter it, then I'll go back to the More button and I'll choose Paste. So here it gives me a little summary of what will be pasted. It's only one file in this case, so I'll just click on Paste. And now notice our JPEG image is within the folder. We kind of have a breadcrumb trail up at the top. We can see indeed that we are in the graphics folder. So to go back to the root of my bucket, I just click on the link for the bucket before that. Now I'm going to build another folder. So I'll click Create Folder. This one's going to be called Projects. So I'm going to click down in the field that just popped up for the new folder, type in Projects, and click Save. And in the same way as with our graphic image, I'm going to select my CSV project file. I'm going to go to More, Cut, and we're going to paste it into the projects folder just so that we can say we've organized our files properly. So I'll go ahead and follow through and paste that there. Now I'm going to go back to the root of my bucket, and I'm going to go into Graphics. The reason I want to go into Graphics is because here we've got a JPEG file where when it was uploaded, we allowed public read access to the file. So one form of managing files in S3 is permissions. So I'm going to select that image, and now it pops up over here on the right with a pop-up window that shows me things, some details, including a link to it, and I can see the permissions here. However, it's not really settable. So instead, I'll close that little window, and I'm going to click directly on the link for the name of that file. Now, that opens up a new screen where I have an overview of some of the settings for this particular file. So not the whole bucket, not the folder in the bucket, but that individual file, which is named up at the top of the screen here. I can see the properties for it, and I can see the permissions which we're after. And I can see here that for everyone, object access is currently set to read. Now that is not a default. That was set upon upload of the file. It could also have been set after the fact. But here I'm going to turn on or click to select everyone, and I'm going to uncheck read for access to that particular object, the specific JPEG file. Then I'll click Save. Notice the object access permission for everyone is now not listed any longer. So now if I go back to the properties of this file, we've got some other things we might consider. For example, here I'll click on Storage Class, where it's currently set to Standard Storage Class, which is used for frequently accessed data. We've got multiple copies of this, but maybe to reduce charges, if this data isn't something that is critical and can be recreated, we might choose Reduced Redundancy. So if that's the case, we can make the selection and click Save. We can also click on Encryption and determine if we want to encrypt this file or not. Now, a lot of these things are settable when you upload files initially, but here we're changing them after the fact. I can even set tags here. So if I want to, I can click Add a Tag. Maybe here what I'll do is I'll set the file type equal to a graphic. And then I'll click Save. Now, we can tag items in that way so that we can search for them later on in the future. So it's important if you're going to use tagging that you're consistent when you work with that across multiple items, like multiple files in the S3 bucket. I'm going to go back to the overview here where we can see that we've got the link. There's a couple of ways of getting this, but we've got a link here to that image. Let's click it and see what happens. So it's opened up a new web browser window, and we've got an access denied message. And the reason for this is because we've removed the read permission that was assigned to everyone. Otherwise, we would have seen the graphic JPEG image pop up. Other common file management tasks would include the selection of a file and going to the More button and doing things like rename. Here I'm going to rename it from Dog in Chair to Black Lab in Chair, and then I'll save that change. If I select that file again and go to More, we can see we've got additional options like getting the file size. That's very useful when you've got a multiple file selection. We can download the file as we've just done. We can rename it. We can delete it from the cloud. We can also cut and copy, and we even have a quick option here to change the storage class, which we also saw we could change under the properties. So here we've already got the option where we could set it to reduced redundancy or standard and so on. Now remember, if you look at the breadcrumb trail at the top, you can see exactly what you're configuring, in this case the graphics folder. Notice that we do have a permissions tab where we can set permissions for specific users or public permissions, either for this object, the folder, or for the ACL of the folder. We can set that at multiple levels. In the same way, if I were to go back, let's say, to objects, so the objects in the graphics folder, and click on one of my files, of course, we can also set the permissions for a specific file that's selected in the same way. So we might manage public permissions for the object itself, or for setting the ACL, the access control list itself, on this object. And in the same way, we can go all the way back up in our breadcrumb trail here to our S3 bucket and select it and set permissions for the overall bucket. So permissions then can be set at various levels, at the bucket level, at the folder level, and of course at the individual file level within a bucket folder. In this video, we learned how to manage an S3 bucket.